What if I told you that a company once raised over $900 million to sell a $400 juicing machine that squeezed packets you could crush with your bare hands? Or that investors poured $1.75 billion into a festival that never happened, leaving thousands stranded on a remote island? Today, we're counting down the 10 most spectacular startup failures of the last decade, and trust me, number one will blow your mind. Welcome back to the channel. If you're fascinated by the wild world of business failures, you're in the right place. These aren't just cautionary tales, they're masterclasses in what not to do when building a company. Each of these startups burned through hundreds of millions, sometimes billions, in investor money. But here's the thing. Every single failure teaches us something valuable about entrepreneurship, market validation, and human psychology. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we're covering the most expensive lessons in business history. And stick around until the end. The number one spot involves a company that literally vanished overnight, taking $200 million with it. Let's get started. Coming in at number 10, Theranos. Picture this, it's 2003, and 19-year-old Elizabeth Holmes drops out of Stanford with a revolutionary idea. She promises to change healthcare forever with a single drop of blood that could run hundreds of tests instantly. No more painful needle draws, no more waiting days for results, just a tiny pinprick and boom, you'd know everything about your health in minutes. The vision was intoxicating. Holmes raised over $900 million from some of the biggest names in Silicon Valley and beyond. Walgreens signed a partnership deal. The company was valued at $9 billion at its peak. Holmes became the world's youngest female billionaire, gracing magazine covers and TED Talk stages. She was hailed as the next Steve Jobs, even adopting his signature black turtleneck. But here's where things get dark. Behind the glossy PR campaigns and celebrity board members, Theranos had a dirty secret. Their technology didn't work. At all. The revolutionary Edison machines could only run a handful of tests, and even those were wildly inaccurate. To cover this up, they were secretly using traditional machines from other companies and diluting tiny blood samples until the results were meaningless. Employees who questioned the technology were threatened, sued, or fired. When whistleblowers started coming forward, Holmes doubled down, claiming they were disgruntled ex-employees trying to sabotage the company. But in 2015, a Wall Street Journal investigation by John Carreyrou exposed the truth. The FDA banned the company from operating blood labs. Criminal charges followed. The house of cards collapsed spectacularly. Theranos failed because it was built on a foundation of lies. Holmes prioritized fundraising and media attention over actually building working technology. She created a culture of secrecy so intense that even their own scientists couldn't collaborate effectively. The company spent more money on lawyers and PR than on research and development. Most critically, Holmes never validated her core technology before scaling. In healthcare, you can't fake it till you make it. People's lives literally depend on accurate results. The company burned through hundreds of millions trying to solve an impossible problem with their approach, all while pretending they'd already solved it. The lesson here? Product market fit means nothing if your product doesn't actually work. No amount of charisma, celebrity endorsements, or media hype can substitute for genuine innovation. Holmes is currently serving over 11 years in prison for fraud. Always remember, in the startup world, credibility is your most valuable asset, and once you lose it, no amount of money can buy it back. At number 9, we have Quibi, a streaming platform that raised $1.75 billion to solve a problem that didn't exist. Founded by Hollywood veterans Jeffrey Katzenberg and Meg Whitman, Quibi promised to revolutionize entertainment with quick bites of premium content designed specifically for mobile viewing. The pitch was simple. People are busy, attention spans are shrinking, so why not create high-quality shows in 10-minute episodes that you could only watch on your phone? They signed A-list talent like Jennifer Lopez, Chrissy Teigen, and LeBron James. They had the backing of major studios. The hype was real. This was supposed to be the Netflix killer for the mobile generation. Quibi launched in April 2020, right as the pandemic hit, and everyone was stuck at home with plenty of time and big screens. Talk about terrible timing. But the problems went much deeper than just launch timing. The app was clunky, the content was forgettable, and their core value proposition, mobile-only viewing, felt arbitrary and restrictive. Users couldn't cast to their TVs, couldn't take screenshots, couldn't easily share clips on social media. In an era where TikTok was exploding precisely because content was shareable, Quibi built walls around their content. They spent $100 million on marketing alone, but couldn't buy genuine user engagement. After burning through $1.35 billion in just 6 months, they shut down completely in December 2020. Quibi failed because they solved for a constraint that didn't exist. Yes, people watch content on mobile, but they don't want to be forced to. The founders were so convinced they knew what consumers wanted that they ignored actual user feedback and market research. They also fundamentally misunderstood social media dynamics. In 2020, shareable content was king, but Quibi actively prevented sharing. They bet big on premium production values when audiences were gravitating toward authentic, user-generated content. They were essentially trying to recreate TV for phones instead of creating something genuinely mobile native. The takeaway: being first to market means nothing if you're solving the wrong problem. Quibi raised more money than most companies see in their entire life cycle, but money can't buy market product fit. Sometimes the most obvious solution, in this case, just letting people watch however they want, is the right one. Don't create artificial constraints unless they genuinely improve the user experience. Number 8. Juicero, the startup that convinced investors to spend $120 million on a Wi-Fi-enabled juicing machine. Founded by Doug Evans in 2013, Juicero promised to bring fresh, cold-pressed juice to your kitchen with the push of a button. But this wasn't just any juicing machine. This was a $400 smart appliance that would only work with proprietary produce packets that cost $5 to $8 each. Evans marketed it as the Keurig for juice, targeting health-conscious consumers who wanted fresh juice without the hassle. In April 2017, Bloomberg published an investigation that killed the company overnight. Reporters discovered that Juicero's proprietary produce packets, the ones that supposedly required a $400 machine with 8 tons of pressure to squeeze, could be easily squeezed by hand. And the juice that came out: identical. The investigation revealed that the expensive machine was essentially performing the same function as your hands, just with more complexity, more cost, and more environmental waste. Videos went viral showing people squeezing the packets by hand, getting the same juice in the same time. Late-night talk show hosts had a field day. The internet collectively lost its mind laughing at what became a symbol of Silicon Valley excess and absurdity. Juicero failed because they over-engineered a solution to a simple problem. They built a beautiful, complex machine to do something humans could do naturally. Worse, they created an artificial dependency. The machine only worked with their expensive packets, creating a razor and blade model where customers would forever be locked into buying overpriced produce packets. The company also failed basic market validation. If they had simply tested their core value proposition, does this machine do something people can't do themselves, they would have discovered the fundamental flaw immediately. Instead, they got caught up in the Silicon Valley hype cycle of making everything smart and connected. The lesson is brutal but simple: don't solve problems that don't exist. Just because you can make something smart doesn't mean you should. Sometimes the low-tech solution is better than the high-tech one. And always, always validate that your product provides genuine value beyond what people can already do themselves. Juicero shut down 4 months after that Bloomberg article, laying off all employees and offering customers refunds. At number 7, MoviePass, the subscription service that let you see unlimited movies for $9.95 a month, which sounds amazing until you realize movie tickets cost more than that. Launched in 2011 but gaining massive traction in 2017, MoviePass was the brainchild of Stacy Spikes and Hamid Watt, who wanted to democratize moviegoing. The value proposition was insane, literally too good to be true. For the price of one movie ticket, you could see a movie every single day. They partnered with theaters, issued debit cards to users, and promised to revolutionize how people consumed entertainment. At their peak, They had over 3 million subscribers and were signing up 40,000 new users per day. Everyone thought they were geniuses for disrupting the movie industry. The problem? The math never worked. Every time someone used MoviePass, the company lost money. They were literally paying full price for movie tickets while charging customers a fraction of that cost. Their business model relied on the gym membership theory. Most people would sign up, but rarely use the service. Except MoviePass users weren't gym members. They were movie fanatics who used the service religiously. As the company burned through cash, they started implementing desperate measures. They began blocking popular movies, limiting users to 3 movies per month, then requiring users to take photos of ticket stubs to prove they saw the movie. They even temporarily ran out of money and couldn't pay for user movie tickets, leaving customers stranded at theaters. MoviePass failed because they built a business model that guaranteed losses on every transaction. They assumed they could change consumer behavior and negotiate better rates with theaters, but they had no leverage and no path to profitability. The company also made the classic mistake of prioritizing growth over unit economics. They celebrated subscriber numbers while bleeding money on every single user. When you're losing money on each customer, you can't make it up in volume, you just lose money faster. Their burn rate reached $20 million per month at their peak. The takeaway? Unit economics matter more than user growth. A business that loses money on every customer isn't a business, it's an expensive hobby funded by venture capital. Always have a clear path to profitability, even if it takes time to get there. MoviePass filed for bankruptcy in 2020, but the concept was so compelling that AMC and other theater chains launched their own profitable versions using sustainable pricing models. Number 6. WeWork, the co-working company that convinced investors it was a tech startup worth $47 billion. Founded by Adam Neumann in 2010, WeWork promised to revolutionize how people work by creating beautiful, flexible office spaces with a community-driven culture. They weren't just renting desks, they were elevating the world's consciousness and building a physical social network. Neumann was a master salesman who turned mundane office rental into a tech growth story. They raised over $22 billion from investors, including SoftBank, positioning themselves as a technology platform rather than a real estate company. At their peak, they operated in 28 countries, employed 15,000 people, and were preparing for a massive IPO that would make Neumann one of the richest entrepreneurs in the world. Everything fell apart when WeWork filed their S-1 document for their IPO in August 2019. Public investors got their first real look at the company's financials, and what they found was horrifying. WeWork was losing $219,000 every hour, with no clear path to profitability. Revenue was growing, but losses were growing even faster. The document also revealed Newman's questionable behavior. He had sold $700 million worth of stock while the company was burning cash, charged WeWork rent for buildings he personally owned, and even trademarked the word "we" and then sold it back to the company for $5.9 million. Corporate governance was a joke. The IPO was postponed, then canceled. Neumann was forced out as CEO, and the company's valuation collapsed from $47 billion to under $8 billion almost overnight. WeWork failed because it was fundamentally a real estate company masquerading as a tech startup. Real estate businesses have predictable economics, margins, and growth patterns, but they don't get tech valuations. Neumann tried to have it both ways, scaling like a tech company while operating a capital-intensive real estate business. The company also suffered from founder-led excess and poor corporate governance. Neumann treated WeWork like his personal piggy bank, creating massive conflicts of interest. When you combine unsustainable unit economics with questionable leadership, investors eventually lose confidence, no matter how compelling the story. The lesson here is that you can't fake your business fundamentals forever. Eventually, investors want to see a clear path to profitability and sustainable growth. Also, corporate governance matters. If you're asking people to invest billions, you need to act like a fiduciary, not like you're running a private club. WeWork still exists today as a much smaller, more focused company, but it's a shadow of its former grandiose self. At number 5. Jawbone, once the coolest name in consumer electronics, now a cautionary tale about hardware startups. Founded in 1999 by Hossein Rahman, Jawbone started as a Bluetooth headset company and evolved into a pioneer of wearable fitness trackers. Their UP band, launched in 2011, was sleek, stylish, and helped create the entire fitness wearables market alongside Fitbit. At their peak, Jawbone had raised over $900 million from top-tier investors and was valued at $3.2 billion. They had partnerships with major retailers, celebrity endorsements, and a loyal fan base who loved the minimalist design and sophisticated software. The company seemed unstoppable. They were competing head-to-head with Fitbit, and many thought they would win the wearables war. The problem started with hardware reliability. Early UP bands had a critical flaw. They stopped working when they got wet, which is problematic for a device you're supposed to wear 24/7 while exercising. Jawbone issued replacements, but the replacements had the same problems. Customer service was overwhelmed with complaints and returns. Meanwhile, Fitbit was eating their lunch with more reliable products and better manufacturing partnerships. Jawbone tried to pivot multiple times. They launched speakers, tried to build a comprehensive health platform, even attempted to pivot to healthcare services. But each pivot required massive investment while their core fitness tracker business was hemorrhaging market share. By 2016, they were burning $10 million per month with dwindling revenue. The company liquidated in 2017, selling their assets and IP to pay creditors. Jawbone failed because hardware is brutally unforgiving. You can't push software updates to fix fundamental manufacturing defects. They prioritized style over substance, launching products before they were truly ready. When Fitbit focused on reliability and battery life, Jawbone was chasing the next cool design feature. The company also suffered from unfocused strategy. Instead of fixing their core product and doubling down on fitness tracking, they kept pivoting to new markets and products. Each pivot diluted their resources and confused their brand identity. In hardware, you need to be laser-focused because the development cycles are long and expensive. The lesson is that in hardware, reliability trumps everything else. A beautiful product that doesn't work is worse than an ugly product that does. Also, stay focused on your core competency. Master one thing before trying to do everything. Jawbone had first mover advantage in fitness wearables, but lost it by not executing on the basics. Today, their former employees have gone on to found successful companies like Humane and Essential, applying these hard-learned lessons. Number 4. Ofo, the Chinese bike-sharing company that raised $2.2 billion to put bright yellow bikes on every street corner in the world. Founded in 2014 by Dai Wei, Ofo pioneered the dockless bike-sharing model where users could unlock bikes with a smartphone app and leave them anywhere when done. No stations, no docks, just pure convenience. The idea was brilliant in its simplicity. Cities were full of short trips that were too far to walk but too short to justify driving or taking public transport. Ofo would fill that gap with affordable, accessible bikes everywhere. They expanded rapidly across China, then internationally to over 250 cities worldwide. At their peak, they had 10 million bikes deployed and were processing 32 million rides per day. The bike-sharing boom turned into an arms race between Ofo and their main competitor, Mobeek. Both companies flooded cities with millions of bikes, often without proper permits or coordination with local governments. The result was urban chaos, sidewalks blocked with abandoned bikes, bikes thrown in rivers, bikes piled in massive graveyards on city outskirts. The unit economics never worked. Bikes cost $100 to $300 each, but generated maybe $20 in revenue before being stolen, vandalized, or broken. The companies were essentially subsidizing every ride while losing bikes at alarming rates. Of burned through their massive funding rounds trying to maintain market share against Mobeek, but neither company could find a path to profitability. By 2018, Ofo was struggling to pay suppliers and employees' salaries. Ofo failed because they prioritized growth over sustainability. They treated bikes as disposable rather than assets to be maintained. The business model assumed people would treat shared property with respect, but reality proved otherwise. Theft, vandalism, and misuse destroyed the economics. They also underestimated regulatory challenges. Launching millions of bikes without government coordination created public backlash and regulatory crackdowns. Cities started impounding bikes and banning the services. The company spent more on manufacturing new bikes than they earned from rides, creating a cash furnace disguised as a growth strategy. The takeaway is that shared economy businesses need to account for human behavior at scale. What works in small pilots often breaks down when deployed citywide. Also, regulatory compliance isn't optional. If your business model depends on occupying public space, you need government buy-in from day one. Officially shut down in 2020, leaving millions of yellow bikes as monuments to unsustainable growth. Number 3. Fyre Festival, the luxury music festival that promised paradise and delivered dystopia. Founded by Billy McFarland and promoted by rapper Ja Rule, Fyre Festival was supposed to be the ultimate luxury experience on a private island in the Bahamas. Think Coachella meets Billionaire's Playground, supermodels, gourmet food, luxury villas, and performances by major artists like Blink-182 and Major Lazer. The marketing was genius. They hired Instagram influencers and supermodels to post mysterious orange squares, building hype without revealing details. When tickets went on sale, packages ranged from $1,200 to $250,000 for the ultimate VIP experience. They sold out in days, raising over $26 million from eager customers who thought they were buying access to an exclusive paradise. The festival was supposed to happen on Pablo Escobar's former private island, but they never actually secured that location. Instead, they moved to a partially developed site on Great Exuma with no proper infrastructure. When attendees arrived, they found disaster relief tents instead of luxury villas, soggy cheese sandwiches instead of gourmet meals, and no artists because they hadn't been paid. The situation spiraled into chaos. There was no running water in many areas, luggage was dumped in shipping containers, and guests were essentially stranded on the island. Social media exploded with images of the disaster. Those cheese sandwiches became a meme symbolizing the gap between promise and reality. Customers filed lawsuits, the FBI launched investigations, and the second weekend was canceled before it started. Fyre Festival failed because McFarland prioritized marketing over execution. They spent millions on influencer marketing while ignoring basic logistics like food, shelter, and transportation. It was a classic case of selling the dream before building the product. McFarland also committed outright fraud, using doctored documents to secure funding and lying to investors about the company's finances. When problems arose, instead of being transparent, he doubled down on the lies. The festival was never feasible given the timeline and budget, but McFarland kept selling tickets and promising experiences he knew he couldn't deliver. The lesson is that marketing without execution is just expensive lying. You can't fake your way through complex logistics and event planning. Also, when things go wrong, transparency and communication are your only hope for salvaging credibility. McFarland is currently serving 6 years in federal prison for fraud. The festival became a Netflix documentary and a cultural touchstone for millennial disappointment. Number 2. OneWeb, the satellite internet company that raised $3.4 billion to bring broadband to the entire planet, then crashed to Earth just as they were reaching orbit. Founded by Greg Weiler in 2012, OneWeb had an audacious vision: launch a constellation of 650 satellites to provide high-speed internet anywhere on Earth, especially underserved rural areas. The plan was technically sound and desperately needed. Billions of people still lacked internet access, and traditional infrastructure was too expensive for remote areas. OneWeb secured partnerships with major aerospace companies, government contracts worth billions, and backing from SoftBank, Qualcomm, and Virgin Group. They successfully launched 74 satellites and were ramping up production for mass deployment. Then COVID-19 hit in March 2020, and everything fell apart. The pandemic spooked investors and dried up funding markets, just as OneWeb needed to raise another $2 billion to complete their constellation. Without that funding, they couldn't launch the remaining 576 satellites, which meant their existing satellites were essentially useless. You need the full constellation for global coverage. The company filed for bankruptcy in March 2020, laying off most of their 500 employees and halting satellite production. It was particularly brutal timing because they were so close to success, just 18 months away from providing commercial service. The bankruptcy shocked the aerospace industry because OneWeb had superior technology and strong market position compared to competitors like SpaceX's Starlink. OneWeb failed because they were overleveraged and undercapitalized for such a capital-intensive business. Building satellite constellations requires billions upfront before generating any revenue. They needed continuous funding rounds to maintain momentum, making them vulnerable to market conditions. The company also suffered from bad timing. They were raising money during the worst capital markets conditions in a decade. Unlike SpaceX, which is privately funded by Elon Musk's wealth, OneWeb depended entirely on external investors who got spooked by the pandemic. Their business model was sound, but their financing strategy was fragile. The lesson is that in capital-intensive businesses, you need either patient capital or enough funding to reach profitability without relying on future fundraising. External market shocks are unpredictable, so your financing needs to account for worst-case scenarios. Interestingly, OneWeb was acquired by the UK government and Bharti Global in 2020 and is now successfully operating, proving their technology and market opportunity were valid. They just ran out of money at the worst possible time. And the number one biggest startup failure of the last decade. Fast, the one-click checkout company that raised $124 million and then literally vanished overnight, taking everyone by surprise. Founded by Dom Holland in 2019, Fast promised to solve online shopping's biggest problem, complicated checkouts that cause cart abandonment. Their solution was elegant: install Fast's one-click checkout on any e-commerce site, and customers could buy anything with a single click, just like Amazon. No forms, no passwords, no friction. They signed up major retailers, processed millions in transactions, and were growing rapidly. Fast seemed like it was solving a real problem that cost retailers billions in lost sales every year. On April 5, 2022, employees arrived at work to find their computers locked and their access badges deactivated. With no warning, no company meeting, no email explanation, Fast had shut down completely. The entire team of 500 people was laid off immediately via a brief, impersonal message. Customers woke up to find their checkout buttons no longer working. The shutdown was so abrupt that employees learned about it from TechCrunch articles, not from company leadership. There was no gradual wind down, no attempt to sell the company, no explanation of what went wrong. One day Fast existed, the next day it was gone. The speed of the collapse was unprecedented. Most startups have weeks or months of declining performance before shutting down, but Fast went from operating normally to completely closed in a single day. Fast failed because they were burning $10 million per month while generating minimal revenue. They spent massively on marketing, hiring, and expansion, while their core product struggled to gain traction with merchants. The one-click checkout market was dominated by Shop Pay, Amazon Pay, and Apple Pay. Fast was trying to compete with tech giants who could offer the service at a loss. The company also suffered from poor financial management and unrealistic growth projections. They raised money based on optimistic forecasts that never materialized, then found themselves unable to raise additional funding when reality hit. Unlike other failures on this list, Fast didn't pivot or try to salvage the situation. They just shut down instantly when the money ran out. The ultimate lesson from Fast is that timing and execution matter more than a good idea. One-click checkout is genuinely valuable, but Fast couldn't differentiate enough from existing solutions to justify their existence. Also, burning $10 million monthly requires extraordinary growth to justify. If you can't achieve venture-scale returns, you can't sustain venture-scale burn rates. Fast's sudden shutdown reminded everyone that even well-funded startups are just a few months away from bankruptcy if they can't control their cash flow. And there you have it, the 10 biggest startup failures of the last decade, representing over $20 billion in destroyed value and thousands of lost jobs. But here's the thing about failure, it's often more instructive than success. Every one of these companies taught the startup world valuable lessons about customer validation, unit economics, regulatory compliance, and sustainable growth. What strikes me most about these failures is how preventable many of them were. Theranos never validated their core technology. MoviePass ignored basic math. Juicero over-engineered a simple problem. Fast burned cash without revenue growth. These weren't victims of bad luck. They were victims of fundamental business mistakes that we can all learn from. If you're building a startup or thinking about entrepreneurship, remember these key lessons. Validate your product before you scale it. Understand your unit economics. Focus on solving real problems and always maintain a path to profitability. Growth without sustainability isn't growth, it's just expensive borrowing from the future. What did you think of this list? Did I miss any major failures? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into startup disasters, you'll love next week's video, 10 most overhyped tech products ever released, where we'll explore products that had all the buzz but none of the substance. Think Google Glass, the Segway, and yes, maybe even the metaverse. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more business breakdowns, and I'll see you in the next one.